Oh, hello. Oh, yes. Yes, this is Blockchain International United. Yes. Yes, we have built a blockchain application for you. Yeah, according to your requirements. Absolutely. Is it going to work? Well, it's built on Ethereum. Of course it's going to work, right? Yeah, it's going to work. Oh. What just happened there? I saw a crypto kitty and my blockchain application stopped working. Shit, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Okay, so this was a small sketch to show what can happen when you build a blockchain application using an essential piece of technology, and that technology just bails out on you, which is what happened with the crypto kitties. My name is Joachim de Koning, and I'm the founder of the Internet of Coins project. And what we do is create a platform, an open system, where we try to include all cryptocurrencies. We try to combine their powers. And by combining their powers, we mean that we try to invite developers to build a standard system that has the future in mind, which means we're not looking at which technology is best. We're not trying to weigh one cryptocurrency against the other. So this example of Ethereum was illustrative, but what we want to do is we want to find out what is the power of certain blockchain technologies and what is the power of other ones, and how can we combine those two to make them better. Now, as I just mentioned, we have a non-profit motive. So what we want to do is find out how we can combine these technologies and how we can get people to work together. And in the blockchain scene, we currently see a lot of innovation, but also a lot of competition. And this means that a lot of systems that are being built are on their own island. So, for example, you have Ethereum with its own dApps, and they work in the Ethereum ecosystem. So, if you look at, for example, a decentralized exchange like IDEX or EtherDelta, that's great. You can trade Ethereum tokens, but you can only trade them on Ethereum. Now, if on the other hand you go to Waves, which is also a very nice system. It's a bit faster, it has its own perks. It doesn't have smart contracts, however. But if you want to trade Waves tokens, you can only do so on the Waves platform. So there you see that each system has its own island. And to us, as a team, we think that could be better. And what we want to do is create collaboration. That's what the Internet of Coins is all about. We're trying to bring the cryptosphere together. So what does that look like? Well, we've made a kind of really simplified picture, which illustrates what we do. Just like a lot of cryptocurrencies, we're creating a decentralized network. And in our case, we're not using a blockchain, but a weave. And And the weave holds data only temporarily. Because if we're already working with so many blockchains, why would we just stack that data and add it to a chain? Again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So we're trying to use the blockchain systems as they are and trying to connect to those systems and seeing what they can already do. And almost all of them can already store data. So that's not what we need to do. But what we do need to do is try to find their interoperabilities and try to find their connections and how to bring that together. So for that, we've created something called modules. And these modules simply are able to connect all these different cryptocurrency systems into one system and to try and make it possible to switch and swap value between these systems. Some people might be like, hey, isn't that like what atomic swaps are doing? Exactly. We are trying it in another way, but it looks exactly like what atomic swaps are also trying to do. But we're trying to take it more into the systemic side of things, to try to take it more into the standardization side of things, because we'd like to see a lot of ideas of swapping value being created in such a way that they can actually be used and that they don't stay in the theoretical realm. So the hybrid D network, it's a daemon, just like Bitcoin has its own daemon called Bitcoin D. The hybrid D network consists of several parts. We have a deterministic interface, which I'll talk about in a little moment. And then we have also decentralized contracts, where you can actually run a contract, but you don't need to necessarily run it on Ethereum, or you don't need to necessarily run it on Neo, but you can run it in a decentralized network where it doesn't actually cost anything to run it. And this type of contract has certain advantages and certain setbacks. So for some ideas, you might say, well, there I'd rather use Ethereum. But for other ideas, you might say, let's use a costless contract with a different type of execution. What we're trying to do with these kinds of contracts is not recreate what other projects with their smart contracts are doing. Our contracts are not so much smart, but they're just simply contracts to connect contract systems. And eventually, we also have an extendable modular architecture, which is the modules that I talked about. What you can do is also create modules for things that do not exist yet for the network. So if you find a technology or a cryptocurrency that you really like to include, but we haven't included it yet, it's very easy to do so yourself as well. So the developer tools are mainly two things. We have, of course, like many other projects, a RESTful API that you can use to just send your commands to. And on the other hand, for deterministic interaction, which is often a bit more complicated if you are, as a developer, not very much into blockchain, we've created an interface library to make deterministic actions a lot easier. But not only that, to make them inter-blockchain so that you don't have to think about what blockchain you're doing it for. You can simply just program what you want to make without having to get all the way into the deep end of a certain blockchain system. These are some benefits that this brings. It's much easier to get started with cryptocurrency if you don't have to learn the entire ins and outs of how to do, for example, a Bitcoin transaction. Not everybody knows how to work with unspent or certain ways of signing a raw transaction, and our interface library can simply do that for you. But not only for Bitcoin, but also for many other cryptocurrencies that also use and employ their own methods to do it. So there are other benefits here which you can also find on the website, so I'm not going to go through all of those here. So let's say you want to run your solution on multiple chains, but what you can see here is a few examples of calling the RESTful API to do something simple. Like, for example, you first authenticate yourself with the hybrid D network and create a deterministic session key in that way. And with that session key, you can do several things. You can, for example, say to a contractor that you've written, I want to give out dividends, and I want to do that on the Ethereum chain. And then you give the identifier, and then you get a raw transaction that you push into the Ethereum network, and that just works. But if you want to do the same for the Waves chain, you don't have to reprogram the whole contractor. You don't have to re-implement the whole thing. That's what's costing time and money at this moment, that we're reinventing the wheel. We're doing the same things over and over again. But with our system, it's much simpler. Once you've written it once, it's already inter-blockchain. And all you have to do is say, I want a contractor for example, Waves. And I want to give out the dividends for that. And then you get a raw transaction that you can push into the Waves system. And that makes it all a lot simpler. You can even create projects that are multi-blockchain from the get-go, and so you don't rely on only one architecture. So here's a small interface example to get a private key, in this case from Ethereum. Now, if you know a little bit about coding, you can see that this is quite simple to do. And that's exactly the goal. We want not just seasoned developers, but also beginning developers to be able to easily work with blockchain. Because at the moment, the level to get into blockchain is still, according to us, too high. And I think we can really lower those barriers, not just for education, but also for business use. So we've created an example application on top of the Hybrid D and Internet of Coins system. And it's simply a wallet. It's nothing new. It's just like many other wallets out there. However, it is deterministic, and it does support many different types of chains and also many different types of token systems. So not just Ethereum tokens, but also NEM tokens, NEM mosaics, Waves tokens, and NEO, etc. With a little film, it just shows a wallet, and the wallet that is the example that we made, and how you log in. And then that concludes my presentation for now. I'm not going to make it long, it's the end of the day.
Open your browser. Go to internetofcoins.org/wallet to create a new wallet. Simply swipe the screen to generate your ID and password. Choose your level of security. Your account has been created. Write down your ID and password and keep them safe. You can now start using the wallet to send, receive, and manage your assets.
Now, the thing about this is, it's actually, with this new infrastructure, very easy to create a wallet. So again, a wallet is nothing new. But the idea of how to create it and how to go about making new stuff is. And we hope to share this with you and try and make this world better and more collaborative. Thank you.
Я бы трубку курил, если был моряком. Мой парус обдуваю тысячи ветров.